Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience this morning. This is Lisa with the Dalles Chamber for our community affairs on this great, little bit wet but crisp fall morning out there. We need the rain, so I'm not going to complain at all. This is when we can get that into the ground and our winter wheat can start to do its thing the way it's supposed to, so we have a good crop in the spring. Today, our guest is Andy with Six Rivers, and he'll introduce himself a little bit more when we get there. But before we do that, we are continuing this resolution, confrontation, conflict, all of the things that you think about that are difficult to do, especially face to face, and you don't want to do by email because that doesn't tell you what the person is emotionally responding to. You just don't want to do that. So we're doing a continuation, and that is what Andy Oliver here is to do today. But first, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves and who you are, which organization you are. So if Andy doesn't know you, he's familiar with who's in this room. So Corliss, you are first.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Corliss Marsh with Habitat for Humanity, the Senior Center and the library. So that's it.
Thank you. Scott?
Good morning, everyone. And Scott McKay. I'm the community liaison for Circles of Care, and we connect older adults who need some kind of periodic help, like friendly visits or transportation, with our volunteers. And real quick, since Corliss didn't mention it, the holiday bazaar is this Saturday, correct? This Saturday from 8 to 2 at the Mid-Columbia Senior Center. Am I correct, Corliss?
That's right.
Perfect. Thank you. Dave Peters.
Good morning, everybody. Dave Peters, Columbia Cascade Housing, Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. We're just starting a Healthy Homes repair program in Oregon. We do repairs. We've always done them for health and safety, but this one really targets the quality of air and structures more than maybe the other ones did. So we're going to be taking applications for that, basically starting now. And we're continuing in about 3 different sites to work on a community land trust. So we'll keep you posted as those finally hopefully get to move forward. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Tanya?
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
First time in a couple of weeks.
Yay!
I was trying to do it from my cell phone before and just decided that needs a lot more work. So that being said, Tanya Brumley, Community Affairs Manager with Northwest Natural, not technology driven, as you have realized the last 2 weeks. What I wanted to talk about just briefly today was not only at the Senior Center is there the bazaar, but also at St. Mary's across the street. So if you're stopping at the Senior Center, go across the street to St. Mary's, which is the St. Peter's Bazaar. But also Helping Hands is going on right now, which is Wednesdays from 7 to 9. Helping Hands is the project where you stop by Wednesday mornings. Gorge Country Media is the main advocate for that. It's a benefit for St. Vincent de Paul and Salvation Army, food, clothing, toys. Every Wednesday morning, 7 to 9, drop them off. Northwest Natural will be there December 4th, if I've got the right Wednesday. And then I think that there might be one more Wednesday after that. So just strongly encourage, they can also take things out of your closet. So especially the coats and gloves, you don't have to have all new. The toys obviously would be preferably new, but if you have just lightly loved and in very good condition, they will take used as well. Great way to get back to the community and make your heart feel bigger and happier.
Tanya, really quick on that. Does anybody have a flyer on that at all? I haven't seen anything and I would love to push it.
I could talk to Chris at Salvation Army. She's been really busy. I guess they had a broken pipe in the old building, but Cody Carpenter, I'll send her an email, ask her to send you something, but then she's cooking for the Thanksgiving. So I know she is. So she's busy. All right. I'll reach out to Shannon. That's who I'll reach out to.
If you have a schedule, just give it to me. I'll make something. And that way I can get that up there. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yep. Phil Brady. Oops, you're on mute.
Wrong button. I'm Phil Brady, Wasco County Commissioner. I'm going to have to check out early. I'm here in Eugene for Association of Oregon Counties convention this week. Learning lots, getting things going, and interesting, but I'll have to check out halftime for 7:30.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Hi there, Tom Pemberthy, marketing director for that college on the hill, Columbia Gorge
Okay.
Community College. My brain is not all the way on this morning, but I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. And Imperial Management.
Hi, my name is Corinne Kelm, and I am the owner of Imperial Management LLC. We are a cleaning company. We do residential and commercial post-construction, and I'm just here to listen today.
Awesome, thank you. And hang on just one second. I thought I had this all figured out. And it's doing something weird. Okay, we'll not do it that way. Okay, we're just gonna play around with this. All right, so our guest today is Andy Oliver, and I am gonna try to be his person over here and doing whatever he needs. So while I'm doing that, as you know, the share screen doesn't allow you to see the people's faces really well and easily. So if you have a question, I'm going to trust, because I know you guys are awesome, just to speak up. Take the mute off your microphone and go ahead and ask, so that we don't miss a question, because that just further engagement and making sure that Andy addresses it. It also, you guys have great questions. We don't want to miss them. So I'm going to let you take over, Andy, introduce yourself, and you let me know when you're ready for whichever aspect.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. Listen, I don't want to overextend my welcome. How long do I have here? I might not even use it all.
So we typically hop off just before 8 o'clock.
Okay, perfect. And I'm more than welcome to give back time if that's where we go as a group. I really appreciate y'all having me here. I'm Andy Oliver, and I'm part of Six Rivers Dispute Resolution Center. It's a community nonprofit that is involved in mediating disputes like landlord-tenant disputes or neighbor-to-neighbor disputes. We're actually certified to deal with disputes in the agricultural field, like if a family farm is being broken up after a death, or management of land is causing issues with surrounding neighbors, stuff like that. We do like parenting, custody types of plans. And I think that some of my colleagues have actually been here before in the past. I think Michael Reed has been here, and he does a lot of the housing mediation. And did Andrea Pacheco come, our executive director? Okay. And then my direct sort of supervisor, Deborah Pennington Davis, might have come before to do sort of a general introduction of this brand new program that just got launched in our pilot year in April, called Circles of Peace. But Circles of Peace is sort of mothership of Six Rivers Dispute Resolution Center, which has been around for over 20 years in the Mid-Columbia Gorge. And please, by all means, interrupt me with questions. I'm Jim Dandy fine with that. If I lose my place, I'll just come right back to it, I'm sure, at some point. I do want to say that I really appreciate this organization because it sort of weaves the fabric of our civic community together. I know there's a lot of attention placed sort of on the federal level of things and elections, but my sense is our day-to-day lives is more influenced by what happens on a local level in town, city, county actions, community, civic organizations. And so I really appreciate the work that y'all do, and thank you for having me. So I'm here to maybe give an update since Deborah was here before about this new program called Circles of Peace. And it's an accountability and healing process that's based on the needs of those most impacted by crime. So I can get a little more specific into that, but basically local district attorney's offices in partnership with victim advocacy services embedded within their office, and along with defense attorneys will refer a case to us where charges have been assessed against an individual, but it hasn't proceeded beyond the charging phase. And they refer cases to us to see if the harm that has occurred in those cases can be addressed through our program as an alternative to the criminal legal system. That's basically kind of what we are. And I think, you know, Lisa, I think maybe I might want to put on our little 4-minute video clip. But let me just pause first to ask if there's any maybe orienting questions y'all have before we do this. The 4-minute video that introduces our program. All right. Well, Lisa, do you want to get that queued up or do you want me to do it on my end?
I'm working on it. Hang on.
Yeah, no, take your time. No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Do you see a black screen?
I do.
Okay, here we go. Can you hear it? Okay, great.
So the role of Circles of Peace is really about the fact that we don't have to be alone when we've been hurt. I think there's a lot of shame that can come from that. And Circles of Peace says, no, that's not the truth. The truth is we're not alone and we have each other. I grew up in a violent home. We didn't know how to deal with it, so there was a lot of silence about it. Silence just left things worse. So I carried that into my adulthood. Became a chaplain in a maximum security prison. And every once in a while, the prison would get a phone call from a victim wanting to meet with the person that had harmed them. And they wanted to ask all those sorts of questions that the legal system never gave them an opportunity to ask. It sort of struck me that we had given victims the best that our society had given them. We had found a person guilty and we had punished them, sending them away for decades, and yet still it wasn't addressing what folks who had been hurt, what they really needed. But inflicting suffering is not the same thing as them accepting responsibility for what they've done. If I get arrested, if I have a lawyer, they're going to say to me, remain silent, don't accept responsibility, don't express remorse. And somehow we think that's accountability, and those women who were calling me knew that that was a lie. It just isn't working. We're making it worse. Our program is a pre-charge program, so it pulls people out before they get a criminal record. But if restorative justice can keep them from having that record, that addresses systemic racism.
Restorative justice centers the person who experienced the harm. One of the main things that we do is to address what led to the harm and to work to prevent the harm from ever happening again. It involves the person who experienced the harm, and it involves the person who's responsible for the harm, and it may also involve support people. In each of the circles, there can be a victim advocate that's really to help with the emotional safety.
The cycle of violence isn't being addressed like it should be. Punitive action isn't working. It's never been a way that we've healed from trauma. Seeing restorative justice being offered is huge because it provides a way for us to heal as a community. I'm the first victim advocate here on the river that's Native specific. So when there's an incident of domestic violence or sexual assault, my job is to provide emergency support services.
When somebody does something to hurt you, it takes away your power over yourself. And that feeling is sometimes some of the most damaging pieces of the trauma. Survivors need to be believed, they need safety, and they need greater options and choices in order to regain power over their life.
Being able to have those kind of resources available, you would see kids growing up with healthy parents, and that really helps them see what their lives can be like.
If a resource like this had been in place for my own family, I think the harm would have stopped. I think there's a real courage that's demonstrated in Circles. It reminds me that I can be courageous too.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. The only thing I don't like about that video is that I have such a prominent role in it, which Deborah Pennington Davis said they focused more on her. But nevertheless, that's the video that Story Gorge here in our area put together. So I just want to pause to see if there's any reactions or any thoughts or wonderments after seeing that clip.
Wow might be the word. It's pretty, it tells the story. It's pretty impactful. And amazing work that you guys are doing to do that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Only thing I could say, Tom, is that historically, when I was a county commissioner, Bernie Smith was our district attorney, and he tried to institute such a program. It had a different name for it back then, but with the help of some of the DAs, but there just wasn't enough oomph behind it, and it never really materialized. So I really appreciate that it's actually happening now, because it's such a great idea, such a great program to actually have that face-to-face conversation between the victim and the perpetrator. And so, which can, like you said, can start that healing process.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else?
Agreed. I think that that's lovely. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, I'm wondering, Lisa, about going to these. I have like 12 little slides here that can kind of go a little more in depth. And Lisa, do you mind if I try to do it?
Oh, go,
So that,
go
oh,
ahead.
actually,
If it doesn't work, mine are queued up. I've got you ready.
okay, well, scrub it up. Go ahead, you do it. I'll just like let you know when to advance the slides. Does that sound okie dokie? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
Appreciate
perfect.
it.
See,
Yeah, I see it. Thank you.
I do have a question while I still have my mic on. When
Yeah.
I'm sharing my screen, do you guys see the little black menu at the bottom that says your screen sharing?
Oh, no,
Oh, good, because I can, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's blocking stuff. So I'm, okay, that's my only question. I'm ready to go. You just tell me when to do the next page and I've got you.
I had the exact same question too. Yeah, because I kept on trying to move it around, but yeah, we can't see that piece.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, if you don't mind advancing one, please.
Let me get it on the screen. There we go.
Okay, so what happened is in 2021, the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission got $4 million in money from, obviously, through the state legislatures and legislation, and that money was dispersed across 8 nonprofits around the state, and most of those nonprofits were like ours in that they were dispute resolution centers, community dispute resolution centers, and we were one of the recipients of that, and that was the founding grant that gave birth to our to this whole project. So we continue to work with them. They refunded, not refunded. What's the word I want to say? They extended the grant or released more monies this past year, and we are, we give them information so they can kind of study the effectiveness of the program. When we started this program, there's a lot of different ways of approaching a perpetrator victim type of a harm. The overbranching umbrella of it is called restorative justice. So circles of peace, which is what we do, it's just one type of restorative justice. There's dialogical models where you get the two people sort of sitting directly. But our process is, I'll go into it a little bit later on. Anyway, when we started this program back in 2021, or at least I started thinking about it and planning for it, we knew that this was such a sensitive thing that dealt with such important issues that we wanted somebody more experienced than us. And so we used some of our grant money to partner with New York University's Center on Violence and Recovery. And for over 20 years, they've been doing circles of peace throughout the country. And the harm that they focus on is solely on domestic violence. But we have taken their model and expanded it to some other types of harm. So anyway, we still have an advisory. There are technical and training advisors, and we still work with them every single week. And then there's a lot of local system and community partners that are involved in this, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. Do you mind advancing? So Six Rivers, I mentioned about a nonprofit. It serves 7 counties, 5 in Oregon and 2 in Washington. So the Circles of Peace program extends to all these counties as well. But anyway, yeah, we've been around for quite some time. Yeah, that's the next slide. And by the way, don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have questions. So I mentioned that Circles of Peace is basically a one type of restorative justice. And this is just sort of kind of 4 realms or areas or stages of restorative justice. There's some things that I want to say, first of all, and that is we are very clear that Circles of Peace should not supplant the traditional criminal legal system. And we're very clear that not all cases are available or, should I say, acceptable to us. And I'll get a little bit into kind of criteria if we want to down the line. But our particular program is a pre-charge program. So if someone comes through our program, basically the county gives the case over to us. And if the people successfully complete the process, which can take up to 6 months or even a year, depending on the kind of harm we're talking about, the cases, the charges will be dismissed. So it's like they legally handed the case over to our entity. However, restorative justice can be used throughout. I mean, they have restorative justice a process before any authorities ever get called. In some organizations, they have restorative justice. There's a restorative justice program at the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem. So that we're talking about, post-conviction incarceration. So yeah, for us, with Circles of Peace, we really are focused on the community and on the survivors and their healing and safety and what is it that they need, and moving that to then responsibility for actions that someone's taken. So yeah, go to the next slide, Lisa. So this piece about being survivor-centered is very important. We work very closely with victim advocates, service providers. We try very hard to listen to what the experience has been of the people who've been hurt. And a victim has full freedom to engage the process as much as they want to. And for some, they didn't want to be involved in it at all. They're like, hey, I don't have a problem with the responsible person going through this and taking accountability, but I don't really want to have anything to do with it. Other victims, or what we call people who are harmed, they come in every so often. Others want a full-fledged circle process of their own. And I'll talk about what a circle process is. And they want to be a part of the prep work that's needed before any joint circle would happen, a joint circle between both the people who are harmed and the people responsible. And not all cases end up in joint circles. It just kind of depends on what's going on. But throughout all this, it's their needs. That's their needs that are centered. Lisa, what's the next slide? All right, so we began this 2021. We got the grant money. We began thanking. And we decided that we didn't want to sort of impose something from outside the community, but we really wanted this to be embedded. And so we put together a design team with local folks and you saw Charlie Herkshan in the video, and she is the victim advocate for CritFic, and she was one of our design team leaders to begin a relationship with that entity. And I mentioned NYU Center of Violence Recovery. And then what we did is we did what's called a community readiness assessment. And we went out and we interviewed leaders, executive leaders and mid-level leaders in 4 different realms. And I hope I can remember all 4 of them. One was in the legal realm. One was the, what do you call it? One was victim advocates and victim service realm. One was in like community, like Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. I heard, I think, was that you, Tom, who's mentioning that? I can't remember. Or Dave. Yeah. Let's see. So in the service realm, so legal realm, victim advocacy realm, service realm, and service provider realm. Golly, Pete, I'll remember it eventually. It'll come back to me. But anyway, we interviewed these folks to try to get a sense of what is it that they need. And so we asked them questions like, how would you define accountability? What do you think a victim needs? How would you define healing? Yeah, things like that. And then we took all that data and then we did a community survey as part of that. And we began to put together and shape this program. And then a part of it as well is these survivor support circles, which are circles solely for people who've been harmed, that is separate from any kind of accountability process, but just as a support. What's the next slide, Lisa? Okay, so I mentioned about the way we get a case as of now. It has to be referred through our system partners. The DA's office, the Victim Services Office, and the defense attorneys have to all agree that that a case is suitable for us. I mentioned the survivor support circles. We do both adults and juvenile harm and crime, and the 4 types of harm we do are property, assaults, sexual harms, and family domestic violence. And when we think of sexual harms, I know our minds might stray to something really vicious. However, the truth is a lot of sexual harm is more the kind that maybe Hollywood wouldn't do a movie on. Like, for example, unsolicited sending of images, sexting, that sort of thing. There's a lot of harm that just doesn't rise to the level that we maybe think of. And the same for family and domestic violence. You know, I mentioned violence in my own home. This includes like adult children fighting with each other. It includes roommates. It includes adults, adult children against elderly parents. We do not do domestic violence where it's an adult harming a child. But if you think about it, again, with Hollywood, when we say domestic violence, what we're thinking of is a power control situation of a male dominating a female. The truth is the vast majority of domestic violence that happens in a home is not like that. And my family is a perfect example of it. I think, had we called the police in my situation, it just would have been catastrophic. It just would have been like taking a hammer to repair a model car. It just, it would have torn us apart in ways that we just weren't, not only financial, but just, it just would have been devastating for something that could have been handled with a little bit of help and support. And also I'll say for assaults, we do not do stranger and stranger assaults. These are people that are known to each other, like classmates in a school situation would be an example. Do you get any questions or anything? I just want to pause there.
I have a question on this.
Yeah, Tanya.
Hearing what you're saying, I'm just curious. Obviously, I don't know what you call the person who is having to, not the victim, but the other party, the criminal, I guess, or a person who's causing the crime or the harm. so if they're not wanting to do this process, then they just go straight to the criminal process, and then the victim just tries to get support on their own. It sounds to me like it has to be both parties agreeing to this, not just on the legal side, but also like the perpetrator and the victim and so forth. And do you find that to be where people just don't want to be talking this out as the person causing the crime?
Yeah, great question, Tanya. You're absolutely right in that the responsible person has to agree to the process in order for it to take place. And for the person who's harmed, they have great flexibility and freedom. And if they don't want this to be processed through us, it's not processed through us. It goes back to the legal system. It kind of depends on what the situation is as to whether or not it would be helpful or necessary for the harmed person to say yes in order for us to proceed. There are a lot of cases where the two people are no longer in relationship to each other. Safety is not an issue. However, the skills that the responsible party can learn can be applicable to other relationships in their life after this is over with. And so therefore, there's some benefit to them going in the program, even if the harmed person does not. But we want to make sure that the harmed person has agency. You know, they've already been traumatized. So the last thing we want to do is force them into some sort of thing or somehow, yeah. So does that answer your question, Tanya?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of adults just don't want to talk it out because they haven't experienced that probably, which has probably led them to this scenario that is causing a lot of this harm to begin with, or disruption. And so I just wonder, I see a definite benefit to catching some of these traits early on in the youth in the school system prior to them becoming norms, to where kids may learn then to have better communication and solve it through communication versus some sort of violence or outrage.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of, it is because we do understand punitive. We understand revenge, we understand punishment, but accountability is a different thing. And in a moment, when we're done the slideshow, I would love to hear from y'all your definition, your sense of what accountability is. But the thing that you heard in the video clip is that, you know, we punish people and incur suffering, even if it's just sort of on a mental level. You know, maybe the discomfort or the pain comes through the form of a fine or a citation, or maybe it comes in the form of incarceration and all of that means. But that's not the same thing as them accepting responsibility for what they've done. And what we're interested in is accountability piece there. Any other questions? Okie dokie. So I mentioned that right now, the only cases we take are those that are referred to us from our system partners. But in the future, we're very interested in taking situations, accepting situations where there's not a legal process that has been initiated. So going back to my own family, we never called the police. So what would it have been like if we could have gone to a Circles of Peace program? Because the number one most important piece going into this is the harm must stop. So what if we were able to engage in a process where the harm stopped and didn't happen again? And overwhelmingly, people who have been harmed, one of the things they'll say if they're asked what they want, which is not always a question that's asked of people through the legal system, and is what do you want? And often what is said is, I don't want this to happen to anybody else, and I don't want this to happen to me. We want the harm to stop. I want to be also really clear in that I'm not, please hear me clearly, I'm not trash talking the legal system. This is an alternative to it. One of the things that I have learned by talking with people in the DA's office and talking to defense lawyers and so forth is the incredible amount of passion and sacrifice that these folks have. I often, in my mind, when I'm interviewing lawyers, I think to myself, you know what? If I was ever arrested in that county, I would want this person to represent me because they're just so good and so caring for what happens. Yeah, so yeah, I think let's go to the next slide, Lisa. So I mentioned about it's referred to us. We do a 30-minute interview with each participant, and in the interview, we are trying to find out who they are, their background, family history, mental health history, substance use history. Oh gosh, we ask all kinds of questions, everything from how did your family deal with conflict to what have been some of the biggest traumas in your family growing up or in your own life. And then we also ask questions about the incident itself. So in the legal system, often some dominating questions are, what law was broken, who broke it, and then what are we going to do about it, which is often how we're going to punish them. For circles of peace, we're asking three different questions. We're asking what happened, what was the impact of what happened, and what do we need to do now to repair the harm in as much as it can be. And so when we're asking in an intake conversation, we're asking questions around those types of things. If the case involves violence of some kind, especially all of our DV cases, or whenever it's indicated through the intake, we have a behavioral health clinician. I don't know if y'all know Shannon O'Brien. She's a licensed practitioner, but she does a safety screening. She's assessing for lethality. She's assessing for substance use. She's assessing for resource use. Y'all probably know, given your roles, the trifecta of I don't know, social degradation, mental health, behavioral health, substance use, and affordable housing. Often those factors are involved in some way or another in a lot of these kinds of harms. So she assesses for all of that. And then we come together in an enrollment decision. Again, we talk every single week with NYU's Center on Violence and Recovery for part of that. What's the next slide, Lisa? Actually, let me pause. Are there any other questions? Okay, so when we come together in a circle, they're like 90 minutes. And you saw in the video, like it has actually an actual circle. We use a talking piece to go around the circle. I can tell you more about the dynamics in them, but in essence, the circle process is in 4 parts. The first part is establishing values, building relationship, and getting clear about what this person wants. Who is their best self in 10 years? How do they want to see themselves handling conflict? Getting really, what kind of a father do they want to be? What kind of a wife do they want to be? Things like that. And then the second stage is about, well, what are the barriers that are getting in the way of that? The third stage is, what are the skills and resources that are needed to address those barriers? And then finally, we get to the accountability piece, where we work on how to take responsibility for what has done. And as I mentioned, the responsible person has their own individual circle process that lasts for as long as it needs to. And then if the harm party needs, they have their own individual circle process. And part of that process toward this last piece is prepping them to meet together. What is it that they really need? What is it they want to tell the other person? What is it they want to hear? How do they want to express? How do they want to express their? How do they want to receive it? How do they want to respond if the other person receives it in a way that they didn't like, or so on and so forth? That's part of the whole accountability process, and it can be in the form of a single joint circle. It might be several joint circles. It might be like a joint circle, then we pull back to individual circles, then we go to another joint circle, all that kind of good stuff. And then at the end, often an agreement is made, and that has to do with future behaviors. And I can talk a little bit more about that too later on. What's the next one? I feel as if we're getting close to the end. So kind of what I'm hoping is obviously let you know what we're doing. But also I mentioned because there are so many other resources needed. So for example, we're not therapy, we're accountability. And so, for example, let's say that alcohol abuse is an element, a factor here in what has happened. They might go a parallel to our process and have their own sort of substance abuse treatment in addition to what we're doing. So this means that y'all have your fingers in the community and know about resources that perhaps we don't. We're always looking to figure out how to build an entire sort of spider web of support. And then, as I mentioned, in the future, we may have direct community referrals, and I want you all to know about that. And lastly, I forgot to mention that in our circles, we currently use community members that we train. And community members sort of bear witness to, among other things, the fact that when a harm happens, it ripples out into the larger community. So, for example, if my neighbor's house is burglarized, yeah, they're the direct they are the direct victims of that harm. And those are the people that the legal authorities will be focusing on. But it impacts me. Now I'm more afraid. Now I have less security where I live. And yet, you know, how does the process include me? And so the Circles of Peace is a way of saying, okay, wait a second, who actually is impacted by this crime, this harm, and how can we include them? And so community members are there to bear witness to the way that harm can ripple out into the wider neighborhood. And it's been shown that if having a community present for some sort of intangible reason actually helps the participants live out their agreement more faithfully. It's just an odd thing. Okay, so I think, is that the last slide? Is there one more? Oh, look, Deborah Pennington Davis, the one who should have been the star of that video, who is our coordinator. There's information for her if you have further questions and so forth. So anyway, thank you so much. That's my roundabout way of doing that slideshow. I know if Deborah is here, she would offer you much more clear and concise. So I have a question, but before I ask this, let me just see if there's any responses or anything that y'all might have for me at this time.
I don't have any questions at this time. That was a lot of information, but good. So, and you had it so that it just, here's where it goes. This is what happened. So thank you.
Yeah, I talk so fast. You could always tell me to slow down. So here's a question that I have, and it's the same question that we asked when we did that community readiness assessment. Now, gosh, what was it been? I don't know, a year and a half ago. How would you define accountability?
It's an interesting question because there is different levels of expectation even within our own community as even at city leadership level. And it's interesting because I am a part of a contract with the city, but there is a different level of accountability and expectations for what I do compared to some other contracts. So even out of the same bucket and same circle of things, there's different levels. So I don't know if there's a true definition of here's the expectation, here's the accountability. I think as you know, we're all different people. We all have different makeups. Our psyches are all different. And accountability for me could be a task list. As long as I've met all of those things for you, I know I've accomplished what I'm supposed to do. Or some of us, maybe the tender heart, all it has to do is, okay, did you get this done? And then there's all this, no, I didn't, and all of that. So there's just all different kinds of personalities. So I don't know that there's ever a pat answer, which makes it tough when you need a set amount of things met. I don't have a great answer for that.
No,
Well,
no, I love that answer. Thank you, Lisa. Sorry, I stepped on you.
no, you're fine.
I think I might have a very black and white answer to that, but that goes with my personality probably. I would say being responsible, taking ownership and responsibility for your actions.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ty.
And I would add to Tanya's that taking responsibility for actions and understanding, and the ultimate is not to do it, not to create that harm again. So that accepting, taking responsibility will lead to avoiding that harm again. I can imagine someone accepting responsibility but still doing it again. And so, and understanding the harm, I mean, sometimes I aren't aware of a situation, but I hear about things like, well, I took it, but they really didn't need it. So I really didn't cause any harm because they have resources to replace it. So that type of thing. Understand the harm they really commit.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody else?
Just basically kind of a combination between Tanya's and Scott's answers. No milk toast like usual. So yeah, just the responsibility, and then at least learning from it. And you know, again, hopefully the change would happen, but at least realizing the impact of what you did, and whether you then take the action further, you know, to not do it again is sort of up to you. But just realizing what you did, what it caused, and taking ownership of it at a minimum.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I agree with all that, and I appreciated what you said, Lisa, about it can be defined in a lot of different ways, especially considering the context. For when a harm has occurred, I think there's also a lot of different ways of looking at accountability. The way that I would do it, and this isn't something that I created, this is, you know, what other practitioners in the field talk about. Taking accountability means accepting responsibility for what one has done, accepting responsibility for the impact of what one has done, expressing remorse, creating a collaborative plan to repair the harm, and then finally creating a collaborative plan so that it doesn't happen again. And so when we think about not happening again, it's not so much, hey, I promise it won't happen again, but it's like, what are the concrete steps you need to take to ensure it doesn't happen again? So one example might be taking anger management classes. So that would be built into an agreement. There would be, you know, an assessment of how effective that is and so forth. Again, all of it is based on the needs of the person who's been hurt. So, you know, somebody might need to have medical bills paid, so they need restitution. Somebody else may need a sense of security or sense of purpose or a sense of meaning or a need for reconnection. Whatever their need is, that's the focus of that collaborative plan to repair the harm. And again, it doesn't have to look like the two parties coming together, but it can. So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, scrub a duck, there's always a lot more that I could say, but maybe I give back 5 minutes of my time to the body out of my graciousness.
Well, we appreciate that. And I'm going to throw in, just because you've done that, I'll take up 2 minutes of it. Just a reminder, we are not meeting next Thursday because it is Thanksgiving. So I just want to put that little reminder on your radar. You all can plug in, but I will be busy driving and getting to where there's a turkey. So the other piece of that is the day after is the Starlight Parade and the community tree lighting. So please, we would love to have you a part of that. If you want to volunteer, we've got spots to hand out cookies, cocoa, and popcorn down here at the chamber for the tree lighting afterwards. Santa will make a presence too. And then also this Friday, because, you know, we need more stuff to do, is Pink Friday. And some people are like, what? Yes, there's a day just for me. It's pink. Sorry, no, it's not just for me. This is created quite a few years ago for small businesses and boutiques that they would help get that business before the big corporate of the Black Friday. So this is Pink Friday, so we are celebrating tomorrow. There are several businesses all over town that are doing specials. The e-blast will go out this afternoon and be on our social medias. Have a little fun, support our small businesses and shop local. And then tonight we're gonna have fun because, you know, we have to add one more thing. We are business after hours from 5 to 7. It will be partially at Brick City and Games and partially at Wines on Second, and they're just two doors apart. So it is a chance to meet both of their teams, what they do in our downtown, and it'll be a lot of fun. It'll have wine and Legos. So there you go. I think that's a solution for a lot of stuff right there. So that is happening tonight from 5 to 7. It begins at Brick City and Games right there on 2nd Street, and then we'll go down 2 doors and go over and meet Matt and his crew over there and what they offer as one of our businesses in the downtown. So if you're wondering what to do, just go to the community calendar. There's too much. Just pick out what you like because you'll never get it all done. But Andy, we appreciate, sorry, I had to get those little messages in there. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate the candidness and the openness and the transparency of what this work is doing. I am so thrilled that you have a person who is working and advocating for our Native Americans, that they have somebody that they can recognize and identify with in with the different pieces and advocating for that. I think that's amazing work right there. Just that one little piece is, and then you have so much more. So thank you so much for that.
My gosh, thank you all so much for having me. So appreciate it. I haven't talked this much since I tried to lecture my child.
All right. With that, everybody have a fantastic day, and we hope to see you out there supporting our local businesses. Thank you.
Bye-bye.